Hello, my name is Reverend Keisha Montgomery, and I'm excited to dramatize a piece called The Past is Dead. This work is featured in Book 1 of a trilogy called Waterfalls. Blessings. Some folks say that the past is dead. Maybe it is. Maybe it ain't. Paul was sitting in his favorite chair, trying to think about the costs of being in this business. 25 years in the undertaker business, and he has survived by God's grace. How many black undertakers had he seen come and go? Too many to name. And he was still here. The people knew that if they didn't have much money and they needed to bury their dead, they could come to Paul, and he would do everything in his power to give them a decent funeral. It was his Christian duty, after all. But what were the costs? Paul had learned the hard way over the years that sometimes when you cut corners, they cut back. He figured it was just about time for him to get out the business. Yeah, he paid the price. And the price was high. Some people say the past is dead. Maybe it is. Maybe it ain't. I love my ancestors. I love my ancestors. They are power, they are courage, they are strength. I remember I took a train from Virginia all the way to New York. And as I saw the forest fleeting by, I thought, my God, how did you do it? Run to freedom in the middle of that? And I remember thinking, if I could just be half as strong as they were, I could make it in this world. So when my mama told me that she wanted to finish the family tree, but no one would give her the names because she was an outside child, I decided that I would finish the family tree. Something about trying to make wrong things right. Something about healing the past. But even I would learn that sometimes you got to let sleeping dogs lie. Sometimes you got to bury the dead. And if you don't, they haunt you. Some folks say the past is dead. Maybe it is. Maybe it ain't. 10 hours I had driven to see Paul. And when I finally get to the funeral home, he's like, oh my gosh, I have to go somewhere. I'll be right back. Just wait for me here. He kind of locks the door and leaves before I even get a chance to say anything. When I turn around, I realize I'm in a room with 3 dead bodies. An old man that had a halo of hair, his best suit on, way too much foundation. But he was somebody. Somebody's daddy, somebody's granddaddy. And then there was the old woman, pearls about her neck, a gorgeous church hat, her hands in gloves, clasped on her chest. She was a lady. And then there was another man, maybe in his 50s. But all I could feel was gone too soon. Gone too soon. Well, 5 minutes turned to 10, and 10 minutes turned to 15, and 15 minutes turned to 30, and I was flipping out. I had never been in a room full of dead bodies before. 1, maybe. 3, never. And I swore that old man, I saw him breathing. I said, Lord, let me go to the front of the chapel. And that's what I did. And it was wonderful seeing what my cousin had built, seeing the fans that people use to keep themselves cool with my cousin's name on it. I was proud of him. But when I got to the front and as I was studying the crucifix, something else began to happen. And anger started building up in me. And it was rising and rising to the point of a rage. And I thought, what am I so angry about all of a sudden? And it was as if a wave of anger was coming over me. Something wasn't right. And I said, Paul, what are you doing? Because it was very clear to me that there were some spirits that were angry. I began to pray, please God, bless the dead. Bless the dead. Let them rest in peace. I was starting to try to find my own escape route when all of a sudden Paul busted in. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Things just took longer than I thought. We can go. Whew. Thank you, God. He's like, oh, let me give you a little tour first. So he starts bringing me around his establishment, starts showing me the tubes and the needles and the refrigerators. And between my anger and the formaldehyde, I was just sick. But I knew this was his work, his life's work. And so I was trying to hold on. Finally, he said, we can go. It's like, oh. But then I realized where we were going, he was living above the funeral home. So how am I supposed to eat is my main question as he's telling me that his wife is going to be preparing lunch. Like, oh no. Trying to calm down, but the rage is boiling. His wife greeted me with goodbye and said a hello, but once she realized I wasn't after her man or her man's money, she relaxed. All I wanted was the names of his family members and I wanted to go. I finally was able to sit down with Paul, start flipping through the photos of the ancestors that I had been able to compile. And that's when I felt his sadness and his grief. What had been the cost of him being in this business? Something was wrong. And then when I got to the picture of my grandmother, Paul fell over in my lap, crying, oh, she loved me. She loved me. She loved me. I didn't know what to do. It was the first time meeting this man, and so I just kind of stroked his shoulders. Some folks say the past is dead. Maybe it is. Maybe it ain't. He kind of got a hold of himself and took the handkerchief out of his pocket and wiped his eyes. He said, I'm sorry. That was somebody in this world who loved me. He said, you know, I help a lot of people. I give them free services. I give them things, and you would think that they would love you, but they don't. They despise you. I didn't know what to say. So I just said, well, thank you for what you do. God bless you. And somehow I was able to finally get the names of his family and slowly but surely leave that place. My mama had warned me. She said, "You leave him be, he's not good." I said, "Oh, Mama, it'll be all right." As I got in the car, I realized I should have listened. Well, the rest of the afternoon, I was trying to go on a tour of the Underground Railroad, and the anger just kept bubbling and raging, and I was just livid. But it felt like it wasn't my anger. And I knew that something was wrong. So I slipped into a store. I found some sage because I remember that some elder told me in the Native American tribe that I was working with in upstate New York that sage was a way to release bad energy. And so I found a park and I laid out the sage in the sun, hoping it would dry enough that I could light it and I could use some of that smoke to just sage myself off. Well, it worked. And as I was praying and saging myself, that's when I saw this boy standing right in front of me, clear as day. I opened my eyes and there was nothing there. People jogging, going about their day. But then I closed my eyes and there he was. A bullet hole in his head. Angry. Jaw tight. Shaking with rage. And that's when I knew the anger that I had been carrying wasn't mine, it was his. And as I closed my eyes and saged myself, he disappeared, and then all of a sudden a new image came of him laying in the casket at Paul's funeral home. His spirit standing over his own body in shock and disbelief. He was dead. His friends and family crying, his mama cutting up. And then that image fell away and a new one came. Him being lowered into the ground, dirt thrown over. And then something else. Men with flashlights, shovels, dark, night. Something wasn't right. I closed my eyes and I said the only thing I could think of, which is, you can go to God if you want to. And then all of a sudden behind him was this light. He turned towards the light and then he turned back at me and he nodded. And then he left. And as I closed my eyes again, there was nothing there. And my anger was gone. Some folks say the past is dead. Maybe it is. Maybe it ain't. Well, that night I had met some new cousins and they had agreed to throw me a big dinner because they were so happy and excited by the fact that I was putting together the family tree. Well, in the course of the dinner, somehow I mentioned that I had spent the morning at the funeral home of Paul. You could have heard a fork drop. The silence spread across the table. You did what? I said, oh, well, I spent the morning at the funeral home. They said, we've been trying for years to get Paul to come to any family gathering. He refuses to come. His wife has told him that we are no good for him. If he does come, he stays for 10-15 minutes. We've been asking him questions about the family. He refuses to talk to us. And you were able to get family information? That's amazing. That's a miracle. That's the grace of God. Well, I was happy. They said, yeah, and now he's going through that big investigation. I said, what? What investigation? Turns out there was a boy, had been murdered, shot in the head. The funeral was at Paul's funeral home. They think it might have been gang-related. They're not sure. Maybe drugs. All they knew is that new evidence had surfaced, and they had gone back to exhume the body, and the body wasn't there. And Paul didn't have any answers. They were going to shut him down. And it wasn't the first time either. Cutting corners, they said. Questionable practices. I thought about that boy. I said, wow. Well, we have to pray for him. Yeah, we have to pray for him. Some folks say the past is dead. Maybe it is. Maybe it ain't.